developed and developing countries. You have balance of power, that's a different thing, but essentially all countries, including developing countries, are trying to promote and protect their mercantilist interests there through WTO and GATT and related agreements. And here is an act where you have a so-called hard law. If you are not complying with that, there are penalties. Compare that with Kyoto Protocol. It's an environmentalism. It's an environmental agreement. It's not about mercantilism. It's not about economic interest. And there you could not go for a hard law, right? Even if you are not complying with that, nothing, no problems. Go ahead. Even if you make a commitment, then just do the opposite what you have promised there. There is no problem. So the whole, the philosophical underpinning, gets questioned that, when it comes to something of protecting the earth, the environment, you are possibly not serious enough. So environmentalism is possibly not strong enough, but when it comes to mercantilist interest, it is strong. You see the membership of the WTO and Kyoto Protocol. When US is not there, almost 1/4 of economic activities of the globe is not part of that. But when it comes to WTO, you will find that it is more inclusive. There are more members, in terms of economic strength. If you look by the numbers, Kyoto Protocol has got bigger numbers. But when you go for economic mights of countries, the economic activities, you did not have Australia till some time back. Even now they have just ratified, but have not done anything. But in any case, Australia did not have any commitment, so it was not really very difficult options. Yes, what I said is actually what you are trying to say. I think it's not different. What I'm saying is that if you are asking people not to use their private transport and use public transport, you are restricting their option, right? It may be through taxation, it may be through, like Singapore does, if you have to go to city center, you have to pay very high fees for that by private vehicle, but if you are going by public transport, no fee is attached. So essentially you are restricting people's choice by doing that, to protect environment possibly. Now, if you can do that, saying that don't use your own vehicle, then can we also say that be happy with Indian apples and don't have, New Zealand or US apples? Can we say, the same argument can be used? This is my point. Because if you do that, then possibly you are also helping environment. And the related question was, yes, comparative advantage. As a matter of fact, you see, comparative advantage theory itself is, it is surely against comparative advantage, but it itself is, has never been beyond question. It has been challenged and it has not really worked in many situations. In some places it has worked, I would not say, but in many cases it did not work. We have seen what, it might have worked for Korea, but it did not work for Africa, So it's not like, somebody said something 200 years back and, I fail to believe, in fact, as a matter of fact, this year's Nobel went to a trade economist called Paul Krugman. And he himself also talked about, how this competitive advantage does not always work. Now, economics has developed so much after that. We have given so many Nobel to so many economists, and you stick to, when it comes to trade policy making, you stick to something that was said, when economics was at a rudimentary stage. I find that very amazing. I think in no other discipline this happens. Let's think about, physical science, for example. Long time back, John Dalton said that atom is not divisible. Had we sort of adhered to that atom is not divisible, just imagine what would have been the state of our technology. But in economics, what is still happening is that we are adhering to something that has been said 200 years back, and that has been questioned and challenged by so many people over 2 centuries. So, it is, in some, but economics, once, I would again remind you, economics is not about physical, like physical science. Like 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen would necessarily make water. Economics is not like that. Some policy might work in India, might not work in Africa. Some policy might work in Delhi, not in Calcutta. After all, economics is social science. Lot of it would depend on how people behave. So if you are not taking into consideration people's behavior and how people revise their behavior, then it's not going to work. And by the way, I did not use self-sufficiency argument for that. I'm not saying this self-sufficient, it is, often it helps, but if one would say, when you are exporting, say, potato from West Bengal to Delhi, say, for example, or Chennai, say, you are not taking into consideration the environmental cost of that, but you are transporting through polluting means. Now, if you tax that, what I'm saying is that then people in West Bengal would automatically find some incentives to grow crops which would be consumed locally. Right? You make selling at a distant place not a good option by taxing. This is what I'm saying. I'm not saying, stop producing, coerce the farmers to, grow mustard. I'm not saying that. But if you use economic means, you can sort of motivate them to do. Second thing is that a lot of it is also about, it's not like West Bengal's agroclimatic situation would not allow it to grow potato, mustard or onion. For example, we don't grow onion here in West Bengal, we get it from Maharashtra, right? But potato and onion, they need very similar agroclimatic conditions, and yet you grow potato, not onion. Lot of it depends on the historical factors that my father, my grandfather have used it. I know the technology, I know how you take care of growing potato, this kind of things. Now here probably government or probably even NGOs can play an important role, that how farmers can get new technologies, better technologies, and how can they get market for diversifying the crops which can help from environmental perspective. In any case, monoculture is not good, that is also everybody knows by now. So you have many other arguments of going for that, and I would show you, I would give an example of UP where the government took a very interesting project they call UP Diversified Agriculture Support Project, and that has been a resounding success. Farmers who would not know about crops, they are growing it, they are using it but they are not growing it, but now their agriculture is more tuned to local market than export market. There are other issues like if your agriculture is not tuned to local market but global market, global instability affects you much more adversely. So there are many other reasons for going for this, not just self-sufficiency. There is one issue is Nigeria. Yeah, I would agree that it more depend on Nigeria. People are going, even if law and order is good, you have almost civil war kind of situation, and yet companies are going there, ignoring all kind of things. Now, pollution is an issue there, and you know about, it's well known what happened with cancer or Viva kind of thing. But essentially, it is up to the local government. And local government is in the pocket of some of the companies, and that is true in many countries. Because as of now, it's difficult to perceive that there can be a global measure unless you get a situation like I sort of worked on environment and investment issues. There is an issue of environment. Many countries are signing, Pravas has been working a lot on those bilateral investment treaties kind of thing. There's a talk of investment agreement at the WTO level.